Like any Minecraft server, Purity has its fair share of badman accusations. These days, the mod team can't make a sandwich without someone accusing them of spawning in the bread in creative and leaking the ham's coordinates to their stomach. But despite many recent accusations being false, or even when true, relatively underwhelming, looking far back into the server's history reveals some actions taken by certain staff team members that, if they had happened in the modern day, would have caused a server-wide riot. Today, we'll be looking at one specific base that resulted in 2 instances of major admin abuse. To start our story, we arrive at a base started in June of 2019. The Pillar of Autumn. The Pillar of Autumn was a base started by the players Master Chief and Mian in June 2019. Based off of the Pillar of Autumn, a ship of the same name from the game series Halo, Chief had chosen to start the base at the coordinates 117kx, 117kz, due to the Master Chief's Spartan tag number 117. Although it was only about 100 blocks long, its design of narrow corridors left plenty of space for decoration and led to a maze-like interior full of memorabilia and player heads from their group, Erebus Corps, and their friends. During the building of this base, both Chief and Mian would be promoted to moderators of the server. Back in 2019, less than a year after Purity had launched, the rules and regulations around what a moderator could or should do were much less clear than they are today. In modern Purity, moderators have a very clear list of things that they aren't allowed to do. Griefing, instigating PvP, etc., and although these rules still existed, instances of admin abuse would be taken far less seriously. Of course, there are limits to what a moderator can do, with their powers mostly ending at the ability to teleport to and spectate other players to ensure they aren't breaking the rules. So when Chief, being who he is, decided he wanted to push the limits of the server, he went to one of the only people with more direct server power than him. Server admin Nuns. Nuns was an admin for quite some time from the beginning of Purity, but at this time, 6 months after the Pillar of Autumn had begun construction, she had gotten quite tired of Purity and its obscene culture and had decided to retire from the staff team and therefore the server altogether. Sensing an opportunity, Chief approached Nuns with his plan. He asked her if she would do something that had never been done before for any reason, and world edit the entire Pillar of Autumn base to another location in the world. There has been some speculation if Dumpster Dogs had anything to do with the situation. After all, their entire faction did come to visit the Pillar of Autumn previously. However, it really was just Chief wanting to test the limits of what he could get away with on the server. Nuns had nothing to lose as she was quitting the server anyway, so she moved the entire base all the way from its original location at 117k, 117k, all the way to 420k minus 345k. A snowy region more than halfway into a different quadrant of the world map. As the ship was airborne, nothing remains of it at its original location. Without taking a look around the area, you wouldn't even realise anything had been modified. So, obviously using world edit on a no hack, no exploit Anarchy server is pretty bad. Do keep in mind though, as I said, this was a different time for the server. But what if I were to tell you it gets worse? In Pillar of Autumn's new location, EC gained a few new members and were doing well with 2 moderators and a bunch of well-known players, such as Fairy Faye and Feraligators, who you might remember from this video. However, in the background, things were not all sunshine and rainbows. Former moderator Doug1, also known as the player who held on to the original Dragon Egg for the longest time, had known since his time as moderator that Nuns had moved the base across the map and strongly opposed the lack of repercussions for anyone in EC for the act. Doug's initial promotion to moderator was controversial in its own right, as it was the first time an active griefer had been promoted to being staff. After demoting, he took matters into his own hands. On New Year's Day 2020, Doug's group Valhalla would perform the New Year's Day Massacre, griefing 3 large notable group bases in one night. That topic could be a video in and of itself, but notably among these bases, the Pillar of Autumn fell too. Frazzle53, another server moderator, had warned Masters Chief that Valhalla was coming for their base, but there was nothing Chief could do about it. He was bound by staff rules to not move his items or alert the other group members. Chief could only tell Mian, the only other staff member within EC. Before the raid began, they tried to work out what had gone wrong. Whilst the Pillar of Autumn was being destroyed, Mian, presumably in a moment of anger, had banned Doug1 for raiding as ex-staff. Not a minute later, the server owner Penguin unbanned Doug, as there was no proof that what Doug did was illegal. Although active staff members can't grief, retired staff were allowed to so long as they did not leak the base themselves. EC weren't certain how their base had been compromised, but they had a couple theories. Immediately, they pointed their fingers at Faye. If you've watched my Varden vs Valhalla video, you'll know why. Faye has a history of leaking bases. So, after the raid had taken place, she immediately jumped on a Discord call and streamed her entire Discord DMs to the group. Having cleared her, the rest of the group went one by one to try and work out theories on what might have happened. Eventually, the staff team had to take action to discern whether or not the base had been legitimately found. While questioning Valhalla members, they heard all kinds of excuses. Initially, they had tried to blame Faye, but after realizing the EC had already cleared her, they then claimed that Winterborn, a member of Valhalla known for his technical knowledge, had triangulated the base coordinates from screenshots, chat logs, and block rotations. Block rotations, for those who don't know, are the common term for a type of coordinate exploit. In layman's terms, certain block textures such as grass are rotated in specific directions to make the textures look more natural when viewed side by side. However, these rotations are consistent no matter what the world state is, meaning that certain programs can pinpoint the exact location a screenshot was taken from when the correct rotations of blocks are plugged in. If it had been true that Winterborn had used block rotations to find the Pillar of Autumn, this would have been the first known instance of their usage on Purity, a feat that Valhalla most likely would have bragged about beforehand. Knowing that this hadn't occurred, on top of how Valhalla couldn't provide any evidence of the rotations actually being used, the staff team discarded the excuses that Valhalla had come up with. Then, Chief remembered something. One day, while building in the Pillar of Autumn's new location, Doug 1 had teleported to him in spectator mode. This wasn't normal, as while it was perfectly ordinary for a staff member to spectate someone if they trip any of the server's anti-cheat flags, Chief was also a staff member and knew that nobody at the pillar had tripped any of the flags. Doug spectated briefly and then left with no explanation. Furthermore, over a month later on February the 6th, 2020, a group of players that would become known as the Chadlets had split from Valhalla. Shortly after this, word somehow got around to the staff team that Doug 1 had leaked the Pillar of Autumn, though it is still unclear who exactly of either group had shared this information. With this in mind, on top of lack of evidence to the contrary, the server's owner Penguin had to step in and permanently ban Doug 1 from the server for leaking sensitive information. Now, while this might sound convincing on paper, let me tell you that this was a divisive decision for the community. It got so bad that Frazzle53 chose to step down from being a moderator due to a disagreement of how the whole situation was handled. Although the staff team's theory for Doug's leaking was convincing, there was still no direct proof that Doug 1 had actually leaked the base. Not even the insider's admittance of Doug's guilt was backed up by any actual hard evidence. Well, I'm not really one for speculation. Until now, you would tend to hear from even the core Valhalla members that although it's widely agreed upon that Doug leaked the base coordinates himself, Doug never actually admitted it, not even months after he had been banned from the server. Not until today, that is. If anyone had any doubts, consider the record set straight. So there you have it. Early Purity was certainly plagued by its fair share of admin abuse, but like I've said several times already, I urge you to keep in mind that this was a very different time to modern Purity. Rules were still being established, and after Doug's ban, the staff team reconsidered the rules for ex-staff members to only being allowed to raid bases that were created after their demotion. If you want my personal take, the staff is pretty good most of the time, and they tend to make the right call in most situations, with a couple notable exceptions. But hey, that's for another video. For now, I hope you enjoyed, like and subscribe if you can, and I'll see you all in the next one.